Good afternoon. My name is Jasmine Coleman, and I am here to share a few interesting findings on the U.S. craft brewery market and hopefully provide some insight that will help guide our future beer production. First, I'll briefly go over the two data sets you provided me with. Then we'll take a look at where these breweries are located and exactly how much beer they're producing. Lastly, we'll cover a few beer stats and look at any relationship trends that we found. So you provided me with two data sets, one containing a list of over 2,400 craft beers, along with some information about those beers, such as their alcohol by volume content and their bitterness level measurements. We'll focus a little bit more on those in a few moments. The other data set was a list of U.S. breweries along with their location. When we combine all of this information, we start to get a nice view of where these craft breweries are and exactly what they're all brewing. And we can see that in this example of a few rows of the data below. I would like to note that we did have several beers with missing ABV or IBU measurements. Less than 3% of the beers were missing alcohol content measurements, and about 42% of beers did not have an IBU measurement reported. We can see an example of that by the NA values listed in the IBU column on the sample data displayed below. To start, we wanted to get an idea of how many breweries were in each state, and we found a wide range varying from Colorado having the most breweries at 47 in the state, all the way down to several states only having one brewery, including the District of Columbia. To get a better understanding of which market we should focus on, we looked at the states housing the majority of the craft breweries. Interestingly enough, a little over 51% of all craft breweries can be found in these 10 states. It also made sense that about 50% of all craft beers can be found in these 10 states, with Illinois beating out Washington in terms of beer production. From here, we decided to look at the alcohol content and bitterness levels of those beers. Now overall, bitterness ranges from 4 to 138 IBUs in all craft beers. But these levels only range from 19 to 42 in the majority of beers as shown in this plot for beers in the top 10 beer producing states. Interesting fact, Oregon also happens to be the state that produces beer with the highest IBU level. Now, alcohol content ranges from about 0.1 to 12.8% overall. But the median alcohol bitterness volume for the majority of beers only ranges from between 5.2 and 6.2%, as we can see in this plot on the right, and Colorado happens to be the state producing beer with the highest alcohol volume. When we looked at the relationship between these two variables, we found there to be a strong positive correlation that was statistically significant. This means that as the alcohol content of craft beer increases, the level of bitterness in beer also tends to increase. And here we can see a few summary stats for both variables. But keep in mind that for future analysis, we would really like to get a better reading on the international bitterness units for more of these beers. So to close, from this, I hope you can take away a better understanding of which areas we want to focus on as we've identified the top 10 states housing over 50% of all craft breweries, as well as the top 10 states producing over 50% of all craft beers. The sweet spot for alcohol content in these beers appears to fall between 5 and 6%, while the bitterness level tends to fall between 19 and 42 IBUs. Also keep in mind that we did find these two measurements to be positively correlated. And lastly, if we were to conduct a more comprehensive secondary analysis on this information in the future, I would recommend that we either try to collect the IBU measurements from those that were missing in this analysis, or find out why so many were missing to begin with, because that could also shape the way we look at this information. And that concludes my time. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And here you can find a link to the GitHub repository that contains the raw data and R code for this analysis. Thank you.